This video is kind of a mashup of different InDesign tips and techniques for you. I'm going to talk about setting InDesign Units preferences, a couple of tips for creating fun and creative headlines. I'm going to cover text wrap, and then lastly I'm going to show how to create a PDF file with printer's marks. So if you already know this information, you may not need to watch the video, but if you don't, watch ahead. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is setting your units preferences in InDesign. And when you go to make a new InDesign document, and if you go to set up a page and the units don't look right, if you have millimeters or points or picas, you'll want to go into your InDesign preferences and set your units to inches. And it's very easy to do. You can always change them back at any time, but once you set them in InDesign on your computer, they will stay that way, and your subsequent files will be in the units that you've specified. So go to your InDesign drop-down menu, go to Preferences, Units and Increments, and you'll be taken to this page where you can select the horizontal and vertical units, and you need to change both of them to read inches. I recommend that we use inches. It seems to be the most intuitive setting for what we're used to. So I always set mine to inches and then hit OK. And when you do that, any subsequent InDesign document will be in inches. You'll see the inches on your rulers if you show your rulers, and it will just make for you'll know what your page size is. So it's a handy thing to know how to do and very easy to do it. Next, I'm going to talk about some headline tips, and I'm going to create a very simple headline using a couple of things that you may or may not know about. I have this headline called Summer Steps In, and I decided I would like to have the steps in a different color and overlapping the word summer. So basically I need to separate these into two different text boxes. So I type in my text, and then I can go Option Drag on a Mac, and if you're on a PC it would be Alt Drag to make duplicates, and then I go into my text tool and I just delete what I don't need to create my two separate text boxes. Very simple. And the reason I do this is so that I can have much more layout control and flexibility. Okay, and it's a good idea to keep your boxes as small as possible. Now, another tip that I recommend is if you want to have a colored background behind your headline, you might be tempted to go ahead and color the text box, but I find that that doesn't give you as much control of placement and special effects, so I recommend that you don't do that. The way that I work, and not everybody works this way, but I do, is to have all of your text with no fill and no stroke around the boxes. So I've got my two headline pieces here, and I've gone ahead and rendered them the way that I want. This is white with a black outline. This is a green. By the way, the color I chose for this is not in your typical swatches palette that InDesign gives you. If you want access to more colors, go to your swatches flyout menu and go to New Color Swatch. You'll be taken to a menu where you can select from many different color books and choose colors from the menus here. This gives you a lot more options than what they come up with. Say I like that orange, I hit OK, and now I colored the text box. Didn't mean to do that. But anyway, the color is now in your swatches panel, and it will save with your file. So that's how you can get great colors. So let's get rid of that. Okay. Alright, so I do want to have a background behind this headline, and I created a simple blue rectangle, okay, and I colored it cyan. Now the cyan is a little too bright, a little too harsh, so I want to have you notice the tint box up here. This allows you to change the saturation of any color in your swatches panel, and it does it by percentages. Now do note that this does not change the opacity, it only lightens up the color. If I were to put this on top of something, you see it is still opaque, but it's a much lighter, nicer color when it's tinted. If I did want to make this actually transparent, the way to do that, and you can't see this on the video, but what you'll do is go to the Object drop-down menu, go to Effects, Transparency, and here notice that you do have to have your object selected. Here you can play around with a couple of fun blending modes. I'm not going to go into these here, but these are well worth exploring. But I can change my opacity, and this actually brings in the transparency that you might need. So I'm going to accept that, and now you can see that it is transparent. So that's a nice effect. I've created another shape simulating waves, and you'll see that they're behind the blue rectangle, and I kind of like that effect, so I'm going to put it below there. Alright, now I want to make sure that my text is on top of the graphic, and it isn't in this case, so I'm going to go Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, so now it's nice in front, and then place it as needed. And steps in is actually it's in front of the blue but behind the green, so I'm going to bring it to the front, and there you have it. Okay, very simple. Nice little headline. A tip to remember is when everything is finished, select everything in your selection tool and Object, Group. Now this is all married together and it moves as one. Okay, so that's a quick way to create simple headlines and effects right in InDesign. You don't have to go to Illustrator or Photoshop to do simple things. And remember too that these are vectors and they will resize and retain their beautiful, whoops, unless you've messed up the settings, that would be a settings change. But the vector-based graphics and text retains its quality as opposed to a pixel-based image. So I'm going to get rid of this for now and talk about text wrap. Text wrap is another special effect that can be really great for combining and unifying graphics or photos or images and text. And there's a couple of things that you need to know about it to make it work really well. First of all, text wrap is an effect that you put on the graphic itself. You do not put text wrap on the text. You want to create, it's kind of like a shield that pushes the text away. Now how do you get it? You go to your window drop-down menu and you choose text wrap. It's a little floating menu that comes up, and here it is. And again, you have to have your graphics selected with your selection tool. And the default is off. There is no text wrap on here, so obviously nothing happens. Okay. By the way, with text wrap you want to make sure that your graphic is in front of any text that you want it to wrap to. Okay. So if I select this box here, Wrap Around Bounding Box, what it does is it puts this little shield around the graphic, around the square that's encompassing the graphic, and I have set the offset here to 0.125 inches, which is 1/8 of an inch. These are in decimals, and you're going to have to know the decimal equivalents of inches. 0.25 is 1/4 inch. 0.5 is 1/2 an inch. If you get confused, you can Google decimal to inch equivalents and you can download charts that will help you. But 0.125 I use a lot because it's 1/8 of an inch and it's a good size text wrap. So you see when I put the graphic into the text now, it's pushing it away. It's pushing it away in a rectangular shape, which might be fine for a photograph, but it isn't working for this because the graphic is circular. So in this case, I would go to the third option in the text wrap menu called Wrap Around Object Shape. Now you can see that it's wrapping in a really nice manner around the circular shape. Now you'll notice as I move this around that my word and letter spacing can get really funky depending on where it goes. Okay, and this can be tricky, but if you have to have the graphic here, for instance, you're going to have to go in with your text tool and you're going to want to work with your tracking in your character panel. You're going to want to work with your tracking to make adjustments for the spacing. And yes, that can be really nitpicky, but it's worth it because look how beautiful and clean most of that looks. Okay, so you will have to work with it. Another option is to change the size of your graphic or the text size or the placement of the graphic. You might want something like that. Okay, one other tip with text wrap is it's highly recommended that you use a justified text alignment on the text. If you use the default flush left, what happens is if you put the graphic in the middle and the wrap goes around it, let's do this quickly, you'll see how raggedy it is on the left side. Okay, the flush left rag right doesn't really work to the left of the graphic. That's why I always recommend all of your text should be set in this justified setting nice and clean, and the wraps will look as clean as possible. Okay. And so lastly, remember that your graphic needs to be in front of the text. Play around with the different options here and play around with placing your text wrap in different areas over your text. Okay, this takes a little practice, but it's really worth it because you can create some great effects, and this might work really well for your final project. Lastly, I'm going to talk about creating a PDF. You may know how to do this, but if you don't, this is a quick and easy way to understand how to create a PDF that shows printer's marks. You may be asked to do this in an assignment or for someone who might be printing your work. So once you've saved and finalized your InDesign file, you save it, of course, as an InDesign file, but then you go to File, Adobe PDF Presets, and either choose high quality print, smallest file size, press quality, whichever setting you want, and then you name and save your file where you know you can find it. Once you hit save, you will be taken to this menu, Export Adobe PDF, and this is where you click on Marks and Bleeds, and here I've checked off all printer's marks, and it's going to show all this information on my PDF. You can of course choose the ones you want. I just chose all of them. And then when you hit export, your PDF file will be created. And here's what it looks like with the printer's marks showing. You'll see that I've got registration marks, I've got color bars, and I have crop marks here. This is information that some printing companies do need to have. If you're printing, say, a 4-color process piece with multiple press runs, they need to have that information. So it's very easy to get to. So I hope that this has been a helpful overview for you with InDesign tips, and that it will help you go forward as you grow and explore. Thanks.